Once we finish updating the nomenclatures of the variables that have a text in terms of upper and lower case, we can continue with the transformation of variables that we have identified that already had some inconveniences. One of them was former crop. It was located down here. We wanted to group some categories with low frequency. We also had the harvest method, where we still have a problem with the typing in one of the categories. And finally, we had yield, the response variable. So we identified that probably some variables had commas instead of periods or dots, and they're also characters. So to do this, we're going to use the mutate function once again. So let's open the database, then use the mutate function. And the first modification is going to be done on the variable called former crop. In order to reassign the categories, we can use this function that's called recode factor. Recode factor is part of this package that we changed above that's called string gr. And what we want to do now is to group those categories that have a low frequency, and we can do it in the following way. I'm going to tell it that everything that's called cotton or algodón in Spanish would be equal to algodón. Everything that's called maize will be left just as it is. And this is a category that had no problems with low frequency. And I am going to tell it that the rest is going to be left as a category called others. And by doing this, we finish this first transformation. Now we're going to add the others in another function, and we'll go over them in the end. And the next one was to repair this problem with this typo, this category that has a harvest method. And I'm going to do it in a similar way like the last one we did. So recode factor. So I'm going to tell it to whatever that's called mecanizado or mechanized. Now it has to be renamed as mecanizada. So then we'll correct the typo by doing this. And this is the only modification I'm going to perform on this variable. On the yield variable, I also want to tell it that all the commas that are found in this variable should be transformed into dots. So in order to do that, I'm going to use this function that's called str replace, also from the string package. And I'm going to tell it that the yield variable, everything that's identified as a comma, should be replaced by a dot. And finally, I'm going to tell it that this yield variable should be transformed into a numeric variable that's currently as text. So I can revise the function. I'm missing a comma here. That's used to separate each one of the arguments that I add. and I was missing one thing to name the database. That's the base de datos maíz, or the maize database. So let's see the result. So let's identify the errors. It tells us that the harvest method is not recognized. Let's see why. I'm going to check the names of the variables. And I'm going to look for harvest method. There was a typo here. Yeah, it was miswritten. I had not seen it. And then we execute the function once again, and there are no errors now. Summary maize database, or base de datos maíz. And now we can revise the variables that we modified a moment ago. Remember which they were? One of them was former crops, so now we can see algodón 418, maize 353, others in a group 30. So we corrected this variable. Harvest method, that double A that we had in the word is not there currently. So now it's included in this category, the one that corresponds to it. And now let's check yield. And yield now is within a numerical range. We have a minimum, average, and maximum value. So we have transformed the variables in our list. Now what we are pending to do is to determine the filters and to revise the atypical points. And that's the next step.